Hello and welcome to Citizen McCain. I'm so happy you guys are here on this gloomy day in DC. It feels like fall is finally here, which, Miranda and I have been complaining about at length right now that it hasn't been cold enough. We want it to be spooky season
Hurry
already.
up. Yeah.
Just a reminder to raise your digital hands if you want to ask us a question. And if you're joining us on Zoom, you can register at 2a.tv/Megan. And if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? YouTube.com/@CitizenMcCain. YouTube. Really quick, we have two wonderful guests coming on today, but I just want to let you guys know a little update. We did our interview with Cheryl Hines yesterday in person. It will be
Yeah.
airing next week. She was a total delight, so kind, so down to earth. I think the first person who has ever come to be interviewed with me in person that came without a publicist or a hair and makeup person, like the most mellow, chill vibes person ever. So it was
I
a really
love
lovely
that.
conversation. Yeah, she's a major Hollywood actress and married to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So
She's been
it was
doing it for
wonderful.
so long, though. I wonder if she's just like, "Puh, whatever, just
Yeah.
another, it's old news." She's just
It
so
will
like California cool. I love her.
It's going to air next Wednesday, right, Ashley? And
Mhm.
special thank you to our team here, Ashley, Kara, Miranda, Carmen, my wonderful hair and makeup artist, everybody who made it happen. It was fantastic. But first and foremost, today, I'm so excited. We have Leland Vittert, my old colleague from Fox News, who is now the host of On Balance with Leland Vittert and serves as News Nation's chief Washington anchor. He is also the author of this fabulous new book called Born Lucky: A Dedicated Father, A Grateful Son, and My Journey with Autism. You can follow him on social media at Leland Vittert on all social media. Leland, thank you so much for coming on. You have a photo of your book behind you, and I think we have, okay, wait, we already showed your book. Thank you so much for coming on. It's nice to see you.
It's good to be here.
Leland, first and foremost, it's been a little while since I've seen you in person. We worked together at Fox News, and you have this great show on News Nation, and obviously chose to go into a new form of media, a new company. How have things been at News Nation, and what made your decision? What colored your decision to decide to move there?
Well, in part, I didn't have a choice, right? Because I was invited to leave Fox News
Okay.
after the 2020
I didn't
election.
know that. I'm sorry.
So yeah, and that is part of the book, Born Lucky. That is sort of the last couple chapters, is being invited to leave Fox News after the 2020 election because I was the first anchor to publicly challenge a Trump official on the election claims. And we now know in the hours after that happened in November of 2024, on a Saturday afternoon, that Lachlan Murdoch sent a message to the executive team at Fox and said Leland was done. So I had a contract, and in Born Lucky, I sort of take you through that phone call that I got, which was, "Hey, you need to respect the audience," which made sense of what was being said. But over the next couple of weeks in November into December of 2020, it was made clear to me that my time as an anchor at Fox News was over. So I had stood on principle and was being punished for it, which is their right. That's sort of what a business does, I guess. And at about the same time was when I was beginning discussions with News Nation about coming over and helping them start what we're doing now.
Are you enjoying it? Your show is very buzzy and you get a lot of good guests and good attention. Are you enjoying it?
Well, you have to be careful, as you know, Megan, in Washington, that the buzz you hear isn't a chainsaw. But thank you.
Not true.
Uh,
Words never spoken.
yeah. So got to be careful there. But yeah, it's great. And I think what's really fun about the network now is how much we're growing. And I'll do a little bit of a commercial if you'll allow me. Is that when I left Fox, in order to get guests, I had to sort of not remind people that I had left Fox. I would call and ask someone to come on, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're on at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. I didn't. Are you filling in for Hannity?" And I know I've moved to a new network on and on, and now we're having the Speaker of the House call us and say, "Hey, we want to come on and talk to you." So I think
Great.
that's a big thing. And then we're also having viewers who used to be, what happened to you? Why'd you leave Fox? Whatever. Now saying, "Hey, we watch you because we give both sides. You give both sides a hard time," and they really like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a really, like I said, it's a really growing network. We're fans. We have so many people who are fans. There's lots of great Batya, who also works here at Two Way, just had her new show that launched, and I'm just so happy to see everyone's success there. One of the things about your book, I had no idea you were autistic. I didn't know that from any experience with you, and in your book, you're obviously very open. In it, you talk about how you were a quiet, socially awkward child, and you didn't speak for years. And then when you finally did, teachers labeled you weird. You were bullied and isolated, even though you showed early signs of autism. And you obviously go into detail in the book about how imperative your father was to your growth and to your evolution into a young man and then a man. Do you think that society has changed towards our impression and the treatment of people with autism? And how has that experience colored, your life now? Because again, I had no idea. It obviously doesn't matter. There's many people in media who are autistic, but was that something you were not comfortable speaking about until this book?
Well, Megan, one of the parts of my dad's philosophy was he didn't want me to be defined by a diagnosis. And the lesson of Born Lucky is nobody has to be defined by a diagnosis. But the second part was he didn't want me to ever use it as an excuse. And so it's why he didn't tell anybody, including me, until I was in my 20s. Didn't tell my sister, my little sister, about my diagnosis. So it was very important to him that he adapt me to the world, not the world to me, as much as he could. And the story of Born Lucky is for every parent of a kid who's having a hard time, not just autism, not just ADHD, not just anxiety, but bullying growing up. I had a woman come up to me and said that her kid had a nut allergy, and it spoke to her so much because everyone wanted her, when she had a nut allergy, for her child to just remove peanuts from all the classrooms. And she said, wait a second, my kid can't go through life never being able to be around people who eat peanuts. So she desensitized him to peanuts, much to the chagrin of her doctors. Now he's in ROTC and in an Ivy League school and in athletics. Never would have been able to do that had the mom not stepped up and said, my kid can be more and be more than what the diagnosis is, and defy the diagnosis. And that obviously is the reason I wrote this, is to give parents hope, because when I was diagnosed, my parents were not given any.
I'm like, I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and I'm just sort of coming into the realm of cliques in my daughter's class. I wouldn't say bullying, but girls who are being mean to her. And it's like been shocking to me that bullying still happens. You write in the book about how you were bullied pretty intensely and you were an outcast. How did you go from being bullied to deciding you wanted to be a journalist and work with people and sort of overcoming that? Because I know a lot of people who were bullied when they were younger that really carry wounds well into adulthood because of it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Someone
There we
go
go.
ahead.
Unmuted. Well, look, on those nights that I would come home, which was every night from school, having been bullied and Born Lucky, you hear 7th grade, I'd been pulled out of 2 schools. My parents get called in to the principal's office, and they are told, sitting there in the principal's office, 2nd week of school, hey, your kid is quite weird. Everybody here thinks he's weird. And then the principal followed up and said, and I do too. And then in 8th grade, another story, and I think we illustrated mostly what the teachers were doing, because if the teachers were doing this, you understood what the kids were doing. Got called in, I was in art class, and the teacher didn't think I was going to become Picasso. So you're sitting there with all the paintings around in art class, and the teacher says, hey, Vittert, if my dog was as ugly as you, I'd shave its ass and make it walk backwards.
God.
In front of the whole class. So you said, do you carry wounds? Absolutely. And what my dad would always tell me is, look, the characteristics and qualities that mean you're bullied and isolated and humiliated now is what's going to make you successful later in life. He could have added, but did not. And by the way, it's also really good training for a Washington newsroom.
Yes. I'm sorry to laugh, but it is true. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be unkind to our industry, but it is certainly the case. Being autistic now, I think there is a societal shift in the way we look at people who are autistic. I always think of like Elon Musk being very open about his autism diagnosis. There's so many figures in media and politics and entertainment that are autistic. I actually was just listening to a podcast. The actress Jamie King was talking about how she's autistic. It's more common than it used to be. Do you still feel like as an adult it's stigmatized, or do you feel like it's something that people just sort of accept and don't care about anymore?
Look, I don't know, Megan, if it's stigmatized or anything else. I've never talked about this before, right? And in Born Lucky is the deepest, darkest, most awful times of my life. I'm sharing it not for fun. I never went to therapy for 43 years. Wasn't part of what my parents believed in. And now I'm going to therapy on national television and podcasts, which is a unique experience. What I would say is I will always be autistic, right? And I can share with you a number of situations, even today, where I've acted in a way that I shouldn't have, and where I forgot all the lessons in the socialization and emotional skills that my dad taught me. It's a learned skill. It's a discipline. And there's been times that I've slipped. I don't ever say to myself or to anyone else, oh, gee, that's because I'm autistic. Or, oh boy, it doesn't really matter that I was super rude to somebody because I was really focused on a task. It's okay because I'm autistic. What my father taught me and what the story of Born Lucky is how my dad said, okay, this is who you are. I'm not meeting you where you're at, because where you're at is going to make you isolated and bullied and sort of singled out the rest of your life. So what I'm going to do is take the parts of you that are phenomenal, if there are any, and I'm going to mold those. And then I'm going to take the parts of you that I can adapt, and I'm going to adapt those and use the skills you have to adapt to the rest of the world. Because I think the flip side of what you're saying, Megan, is this concept that the world should adapt for everybody, right? And it's a beautiful concept. If there were unicorns and pots of gold at the end of rainbows, it'd be fantastic. But that's just not the way the world is. And I think this book, Born Lucky, is the story of the way the world really is in showing parents how they can help their kids in that world.
One of the things we wanted to ask you about is this new report that Tylenol is linked to autism during pregnancy. I'm pregnant right now. My pediatricians have advised me to go with the recommendation from before, just to take Tylenol if you have a fever, and that it's fine. Obviously, don't overuse it the way you do anything else. What did you think of the report that came out of the correlation? And do you think that, like, there's something about it that feels very, I think, as a woman, as a mom, it feels very like accusatory towards mothers and towards women, that you do, like, Miranda has 2 children as well. Like, if you've taken Tylenol during pregnancy, it's somehow your fault. And I'm far from a doctor, but what was your reaction when you heard that report from RFK and President Trump?
Well, I called my mother. I asked if she took Tylenol when she was pregnant with me. She said, I'm more of an Excedrin kind of girl. But I am not a doctor. I am not a scientist, and I have the chemistry grades to prove it. So any type of discussion about, should you take Tylenol, should you not? I have absolutely no opinion on. And I think everybody needs to make their own decision and talk to their doctor. Hard to imagine we need to say that, but fine. The second half of your question is, I am so thrilled that autism is now the scientific question of our time, because it went from 1 in 1,500 when I was a kid, 1 in 31 now, 3 times higher for boys, higher still in poor and minority communities. I think it's fair to say that I've turned out probably the best someone could from an autism diagnosis in the hell that I went through. It was still hell. If my wife was pregnant right now and you gave me a choice, are we going to have an autistic child or not? Check a box. I would absolutely choose no. Okay. I think any other parent would as well. So with that, if we are starting to look for the cause of why there's been this explosion in cases that no one can seem to explain, hallelujah. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And more importantly, I think it really shows that you have people who are so much more interested in attacking Trump and RFK Jr. than they are in acknowledging that this quest to find this answer is a really important.
Have you talked to any parents of children with autism, or do you have anyone working with you, or people that have autism, even young people? Have they come up to you to share their stories as well?
Sure. Yeah, tons. And I think what's interesting is how the Born Lucky message, even in the week that the book's been released, we're now in our 3rd printing. And as you note, Megan, we're both on television. So it's a very narcissistic
I'm on the internet,
profession.
but thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're both there. And I'm not narcissistic enough to think that the reason the book's doing so well and is because of me. It's because parents need to be told how much agency they have, right? And yeah, I've heard from zillions of parents. And what I thought was most interesting is Born Lucky isn't a prescription. It's not a cure. It's my story, right? It's a story of how parents can help their kids be more. And I was talking to the father of a profoundly autistic child. So somebody who moderately, if at all, verbal, was clearly going to need help for the rest of his life. He was in his early 20s. And he said, this story so inspires me and so speaks to what kids need to hear, because my son, who, the big thing for him was to get to go to the pool 3 times a week and sort of splash around. And the therapist and everybody else were like, great, he's so happy, he's splashing around. And I said, let's teach him how to swim. And they said, really? Not sure that can happen. But through this father's will, he taught his son at 20 years old to swim. Now the kid's swimming 1.25 miles every day. So 85 laps or more. Physical fitness has become a huge part of his life. He's much happier. He feels like he accomplishes something. He's excited every morning that he knows he gets to go to the pool. So is that a story of, adapting your kid and helping him be more? Absolutely. And it wouldn't have happened if this father hadn't really pushed.
No, I think that's wonderful. And I really like your attitude and perspective that we can't switch the world to a child. We have to live in the world that it exists, for better, for worse. For whatever it's worth, I'm wildly bored by most books I am pitched. And I thought this was just such a lovely,
Thank you.
vulnerable, open, needed book.
It is vulnerable.
Now. Yeah, it is. It really, especially given, respectfully, you're a very respected journalist. To come out with all of that is very, I just really applaud you, and I'm happy it's such a success. I'm seeing it everywhere in real bookstores and real places too.
Wow.
Sometimes political books come out and you don't, sometimes I have books that come out that don't go anywhere, and I'm happy that yours is doing so well. Is there anything else you want to talk about the book before we switch to some news of the day?
I mean, the one thing I would just pick up on this, and I think what you're saying is what my dad and I really hope, because Dad, as you said, didn't tell anyone. When I was diagnosed at 5 years old, they said to my parents, one of those little medical waiting rooms with stale coffee and old magazines, they had told my parents, Lucky needs to be evaluated. And as you know, as a parent, the worst thing you could ever hear is your kid needs to be evaluated. So they're scared. The woman walks back with me and says, look, he's got huge behavioral issues. He'll touch anybody touches him in the lunch line, he slugs them. Big sensory issues. He can't wear socks and certain clothes because of how they touch. I mean, all classic signs of autism, and a huge learning disability. Learning disability is a 20-point spread between the 2 IQ tests. I had a 70-point spread, biggest spread they'd ever seen. And they said to my dad, there's not much you can do. Meet him where he's at. My dad goes, is there anything we can do? And the woman says, generally not. So he was hopeless. And as we were writing this book and sharing all these stories, my dad said, I don't know if we want to do this. I made him a deal. I'm going to give you the manuscript. If you don't want me to turn it in, I won't. And when he read the manuscript, he said, I can't tell all this. All these things that are in here that we've never told anyone. Why would you do this now? And I said, Dad, if in that medical waiting room, when that woman said there was no hope and there wasn't much you could do, instead handed you Born Lucky, how would you feel? And he said, I would have read it every week. So you're picking up, Megan, on why we're doing this, and I think why it's resonating with so many parents.
Yeah, and I really congratulate you. And, we all know people who have autism. We all know people with children with autism. And I think giving them hope instead of just pessimism is so important right now. And like I said, it is completely irrelevant that you're autistic, but I never would have guessed. So whatever.
Well, my dad did a good job. And I think, and I would say this, I've said this a lot. And I said it in the book. Autism you don't get cured from, right? This is no different than alcoholism or something like that. Something I struggle with every day. Probably right now I should stop talking, but sufficing to say, if we spent a little bit more time together, if we were at dinner or a couple dinners, you'd see it. You'd see signs.
Well, regardless, like I said, I really applaud you. I do want to switch to some news of the day because you are a well-respected journalist and you do a lot of work in the field. You were actually, when I was at Fox, you were a foreign correspondent for Fox in Jerusalem. Can you tell me how you're feeling about the president's peace deal negotiations with Hamas right now? And one of the things that I have found So interesting, horrifying, and fascinating in this moment is the huge turn against Israel on social media in so many different channels on the left and the right. What do you make of all of this?
Megan, I am scared and appalled that the Hamas flag now is marched through the streets of New York City. And you think about 2 years after the worst attack and killing of Jews since the Holocaust. Now, 2 years later, New York City is getting ready to elect a Hamas sympathizer as its mayor. There are people now walking through, in New York talking about how October 7th wasn't enough. We need more. And it wasn't one person. It was at a big rally that was held with Hamas flags. It is absolutely horrifying and terrifying to me on so many levels. And I think for a Democratic Party that says they're so worried about the next Hitler, on and on and on, they might want to look inward before looking outward at what is growing inside their party. So that is, and you look at what's happening in the UK and in France and in Spain, it's much worse. And the attacks that are happening against Jews. So the thought that after 2 years from October 7th, and when I was in the Middle East, I learned you never worry about the right thing. You can never predict the future, right? 2 years after October 7th, Hamas and Hezbollah are destroyed. Iran's nuclear program is in ashes. And the threat against Jews and the call for violence against Jews around the world is only louder, which is sort of the opposite of what you would have thought would have happened after October 7th, right? So I think that, if you can get the hostages home and if Hamas is willing to lay down its weapons, great. The only chance people in Gaza have, and I've been to Gaza and it's a hellhole, but the only chance they have is if Hamas leaves, which I don't think they will. But if President Trump can, through pressuring the rest of the Arab world, get that to happen, hallelujah.
I agree with you that Mamdani really petrifies me as well. And the sort of downplaying of how serious some of the things he says is something that's incredibly alarming. When you interview people who are, on the other side and saying that things like that are okay, do you have any do you feel like there's any middle ground on all of this? Because I feel like this is one of okay, yeah. I feel like this is one of the most divisive
here's why. And here's why. I have met Palestinians, quote unquote, who believe that they want to live in peace with the Israelis. That is not the dominant view, either in the West Bank or in Gaza. That is not the dominant view, even the view of the leaders of the Palestinians. So I think when someone is parroting terrorist talking points, and I'll put it in a different way. Imagine if there was a march through New York City with people wearing Klan hoods right now, which is no different than a Hamas flag, or calling for the murder of Asians or any other minority that existed. The world, we would all be appalled. It would be the lead story. It would be the biggest story in America right now. How does this hate ferment in America that you're celebrating the murder of a minority group and calling for continued murder? That is a full stop issue to me. The whole why and the debate of the Palestinians and their plight and everything else is completely separate to me than that. And even then I would say, and I said, starting on October 7th, 2 years ago, this is a moment where moral clarity is required. Is Israel perfect? No. But in Born Lucky, I tell you the story of interviewing a failed suicide bomber who the Israelis had saved multiple times.
Crazy story. Yes.
Yes.
Go ahead. Sorry.
The story of Wafa. And I don't know if you want me to bore your viewers with it.
Yeah. No. It's really fascinating. Go ahead.
So in the second intifada, so mid-2000s, there was a woman named Wafa who was 18, 19, 20 years old living in Gaza. And there was a cooking accident in her Gaza apartment, which admittedly Gaza apartments are slums. And she was terribly burned, third-degree burns. Gaza doesn't have good medical facilities. They spend all the money that's given to them not on medical facilities, but on building tunnels. So they ship Wafa fighting for her life to Israel. The Israelis treat her, save her life, give her the best medical care in the world. And she now leaves the hospital a couple of years later and goes back to Gaza, but has to come back into Israel all the time for her medical care. So she has a pass to get from Gaza into Israel, which during the second intifada, suicide bombings, bus bombings, whatever, was very valuable to the Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. They recruit her as a suicide bomber. She's given 3 target choices: a bus, a cafe, and the hospital that treated her. She chooses the hospital that treated her. Think about that. She gets to the crossing from Gaza into Israel. The Israelis are suspicious. They figure out that she has a bomb. She tries to detonate the bomb. It doesn't go off. So she goes to an Israeli prison. She's in the Israeli prison. They treat her wounds. They send her to college so she gets educated. They keep her alive. They do everything else. She gets traded back to Gaza in the Gilad Shalit deal. Among the other people traded back to Gaza was Yahya Sinwar that planned October 7th. So Wafa gets to Gaza in about 2012. I think it was November, December of 2012. I was a correspondent in Jerusalem for Fox. And I thought this was going to be a great redemption story, right? I was going to go to Gaza. I was going to interview this woman. She was going to say, look, I've now seen the light. I didn't die in my suicide bombing. I'm going to be a vehicle for peace. I take my iPad with the surveillance video of her trying to blow herself up from that checkpoint 8 years before. Get to her apartment, another slummy apartment in Gaza, and I show her the video. And she's watching the video and her eyes get wide as saucers. She goes, oh, oh, oh. And she's smiling as she's watching this video. I said, what are you thinking? She said, I almost tasted paradise. I said, okay. And then I thought for a second and I said, would you do it again? And she said, in a second. She goes, this is my calling. The Israelis are infidels, the enemy, whatever the translation was, I don't remember. And that is when my view changed from sort of the conventional wisdom of, hey, there's 2 sides to this, to there is good and evil. The Israelis are not perfect, but this is what they're up against. And anybody who says Wafa is sort of the exception rather than the rule, I would suggest they go spend a few days in Gaza and then come back and talk to me.
It's a really petrifying and horrific story. I read it in your book, and then I saw you tell it in a different interview, and I think you should tell it as many places as possible, because I think it's a huge warning about not just what they're up against, but what about the West is up against in regards to Islamic extremism. And it's, thank you for sharing that, but it's just, I literally have like chills right now.
I did too.
Like flip. Ugh.
I know.
God.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Miranda, if you want to jump in here, I'm like totally bogarting.
I'm like in awe of you guys. I'm just listening. Go, keep going.
Can we ask you, Miranda and I were, this morning, and like, before we just quickly move on, I just want to really thank you for sharing that, Leland. I think it's a really important and
going there and putting your life on the line for those types of stories, because gosh, that's incredibly brave. Wow.
Yeah. And Miranda and I are both pro-Israel. So despite the fact that it probably gets us less clicks on the internet, and I just can't, I can't switch. I'm really horrified by the trends happening everywhere right now. And I'm going to say one more thing. Leland, Miranda, and I are not being paid by Israel right now.
We got accused over the weekend of getting paid for just saying the word Israel on the show. And if we were, God, we wouldn't be doing it from the floor of my kid's bedroom. So that's a whole other story.
Leland, I don't know if you've seen this video of gubernatorial candidate Katie Porter. For people that haven't seen it, she has a clip that has gone viral.
California,
she's in California. Yes, I'm sorry. She used to be a congresswoman in Congress. I don't know if you've ever interviewed her. I always knew of the rumors I always heard of her just having a terrible reputation for the way she treated her staff and reporters. Yeah. We would like to play this clip for people who haven't seen it and then get Leland's reaction. Number 1, please.
Is, what do you say to the 40% of voters who voted for Trump?
Oh, I'm happy to say that. It's the do you need them to win part that I don't understand. I'm happy to answer the question as you have it written, and I'll answer it.
And we've also asked the other candidates, do you think you need any of those 40% of California voters to win? And you're saying, no, you don't.
No, I'm saying I'm going to try to win every vote I can. And what I'm saying to you is that...
Well, to those voters, okay, so you...
I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to call it. Okay. Thank you.
You're not going to do the interview with us?
Nope, not like this. I'm not. Not with 7 follow-ups to every single question you ask.
Every other candidate has answered.
I don't care. I don't care. I want to have a pleasant, positive conversation in which you ask me about every issue on this list. And if every question you're going to make up a follow-up question, then we're never going to get there.
Leland, you're laughing, as you should, but that CBS reporter, Julie Watts, I don't think was doing anything in any way that is in any way strange or out of the norm of what a reporter asks. What is wrong with Katie Porter, and why is she being like this? And I just, does she understand you can't become governor without the help of the fourth estate and the California press to get her there?
Well, I guess the difference question, right, is I was told that attacking the press was somehow un-American, right? And that, Democrats said that, God forbid you say anything bad about the press. Hard to imagine somebody walking out on the press who thinks the press is so important. I think it's illustrative of a larger issue. And again, my show's different on cable news. For those who haven't watched News Nation on Balance, I give both sides a really hard time. Had the Speaker of the House on last night and went 4 or 5 rounds with him, and then had Debbie Wasserman Schultz on the next block, went 4 or 5 rounds from her. And what makes it different is I think both sides get a hard time, right? It is not a safe space for either side. That's why our folks and our viewers are loyal to us. I think it's illustrative of the fact that Democrats for so long have become accustomed to not having to answer hard questions. Because the press, generally speaking, the broader media has not asked them of Democrats, and therefore they're not used to it and they don't know how to answer them. And what I think is stunning to me is that how many Republicans, even after just going after them, are willing to come back on, and how hard it is for us to book Democrats with just to ask basic questions to. They're unwilling to go into, forget Fox News, but just to a unfriendly or a non-friendly, I should say, media. I think I'm sort of unfriendly to everybody because I think that's what journalists should be, the skunk at the garden party. But Democrats just aren't used to it. They don't understand it. And I think that sort of shows where we're at right now. And I think it probably has been a huge disservice to Democrats.
The question also was very simplistic. It was just, how are you going to win over the 40% of Californians that voted for Trump? Like,
right.
It's a very easy question.
That wasn't even a tough question. And CBS isn't an unfriendly outlet. So for her to just kind of snap like that is very telling of her, what she's like behind closed doors, what she might be like as a governor of California, and what she's like as a leader.
How about what she's like as
a
mother or a friend?
As a person, she doesn't seem like a very kind or good person.
Well, that was always the thought about her in Washington, right? I mean, nobody particularly thought that she was an exceptionally kind or nice human being, which eventually that comes out, which it does. I think it's more illustrative, though, of how Democrats have gotten used to safe spaces. And there was never safe spaces for Republicans because every media outlet was adversarial towards them. And as the media landscape is shifting, I think you're going to start seeing that there's going to be a different kind of Democrat who rises to the top, who can deal with that. It's one of the things I always admired about Pete Buttigieg, that he was always willing to come on and have that have that back and forth without ever becoming disagreeable or combative or taking it personally, which are things you just can't do in politics.
And as a resident of California, I want to backtrack just a little bit because it sounds almost like we're attacking her for being a woman who isn't nice. And that's not what this is. I don't care if my governor is nice or kind or whatever. I just don't want someone who's abusive. I
care if someone's a kind person.
I don't need them to be like, I don't need them to be like nice and dropping off muffins and whatever and being fake. I'd rather them be honest and true to who they are and show me that than someone who's going to play nice to the cameras and then be horrible in the shadows.
He has a really bad reputation, like at least in DC, and huge staff turnover rate. And
well, even just we were talking about her divorce stuff that's out in the public. She dumped burning hot mashed potatoes on her ex-husband's head. Like, this is not a good person.
Yeah, I feel bad for the people of California. Really quickly, Lynn, I hope you don't mind. We have a question from one of our viewers. I believe Kenny is on here. Hello, Kenny. I understand you have a question for Leland. Go for it.
Hey, Kenny.
It's Professor Kenny, thanks. I have to correct the record only because my wife gets mad. She's like, why do you let them call you Kenny? That's your last name. It's Professor Kenny. Okay. Jimmy Kenny, by the way. Leland, I just want you to know that I have your book right here on my Kindle. I don't know if we can see it, but anyway, I bought your book, and I'm a huge fan of News Nation.
Thank you.
everywhere I go, I talk about News Nation and the two-way. That's where I get my politics from. So this
Nice.
is a great marriage right now at this moment. And Megan, you're so much smarter than I am because I was going to ask all of the questions about Israel and you stole all my thunder. And I should have known you would have because you're, like I said, you're a lot smarter than me. So I will switch to the government shutdown because I watched
Mhm.
Leland last night and I watched him with uh, uh, House Leader Johnson and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And what I'll ask you, Leland, is there a way, because right now the Democrats are polling better in terms of the shutdown, right? You showed it last night and it is true. But is there a way for the Republicans to kind of regain some footing in terms of that? Because you brought up the when Trump was saying, well, we might not pay, we might not give back pay to certain workers. But when you watch the video, you know, it's typical Trump. He's saying BS and not backing it up. So, do you think there's any way the Republicans can make a message comeback in terms of this shutdown?
It's awfully hard to regain the narrative in politics. I think Megan probably can speak to that better than I can. It's very hard to see ever a side regaining the narrative unless the other side massively screws up, which so far the Democrats have not because they're playing the victims here. I think the thing that will change the narrative, at least historically, was the air traffic controller issue, right? Because if we went back to the last long shutdown, it was when you started having big delays at airports, with air traffic controllers walking out because they weren't getting paid, that all of a sudden everybody's like, okay, we need to end this. So that's probably where I'm looking, is what is going to be the pressure point that ends this. That may be it, and we're already starting to see it happen.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Professor
Thank
Kenny.
you.
It's nice to see you again.
Thanks, Professor.
Thank you.
I know we're running on time, but I would be remiss, Leland, if I didn't ask you about the horrific assassination of Charlie Kirk. It's had a huge impact on all of us, on the political environment, on America at large. One of the most significant things that's happened is the Commonwealth of Kentucky filed a lawsuit against Roblox, which alleges the gaming platform has exposed children to heinous material, including simulations of the assassination. What has it been like for you, just obviously as someone who's public, someone who is attempting to talk to both sides and interview both sides, and like you said, be hard on everyone in this environment? It's certainly challenging. And do you think, like I said, with this lawsuit against Roblox, do you think there's going to be more emphasis on the radicalization happening online?
You know, Megan, it's a great question. It's not one that I've studied enough to speak sort of authoritatively on. People being mean to each other and then the exploitation of that for clicks or for traffic or whatever you have. I don't know how you regulate that, or regulate it out of existence. I think the part about Charlie Kirk's assassination that will stick with me for the rest of my life is what happened in that arena. Or in that football stadium. I don't know if you were there or you were, Miranda, but I went out to cover it. And there have been two moments in my life that you could feel the emotion of the crowd. One was in Tahrir Square, the night Hosni Mubarak resigned. I was there, the multi-million person Egyptian revolution, the roar from the crowd when Mubarak resigned, that roar of freedom, if you will. And then the gasp from the crowd when Erica Kirk said, "That man, I forgive him. That young man, I forgive him." And it was a physical and audible response. We all felt something different. And I think, and my hope would be that that is the legacy of Charlie Kirk, and that somehow, some way, we're all better for it. And I know that sounds really Pollyanna, and I don't mean it to be this sort of like, oh, let's all hold hands answer, but I kind of don't know what else to say because it was so profound. And that was his message, right? Which was to talk to everybody, and be civil about it, and to not make it personal, and to believe in the best possible things for everybody. So you put all that together, I guess, is my way of saying that would be my hope out of all of it. And beyond that, I don't know what else works. You know, on the show, we were very critical of President Trump and of the administration for not understanding what that moment was and not understanding what made Kirk so powerful. And if anything, I think that shows the split between MAGA and what was Kirk, now Turning Point USA, was that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you that of all the things I've ever seen in my life, her saying she forgives him is definitely one that I think will stay in the American lexicon for generations. And she's incredibly brave and stoic and just, elegant in a way that I could never be under those circumstances. Leland, I really appreciate all your time today. I hope everyone goes and picks out his book, Born Lucky, A Dedicated Father, A Grateful Son, and My Journey with Autism. And obviously watch him every weeknight on Balance with Leland Vittert on News Nation. You can follow him on social media, all places, Leland Vittert. I'm really so grateful to have you on. Come back anytime. And thank you so much. And like I said, I really am so happy for all your success with this book.
Megan, thank you very much. Next time I come on, I want to tell one of my favorite stories ever interviewing your dad, because yeah,
you should have told that. What we have our next guest can wait. He's my friend. Tell me really quick. I can resist anything but temptation. I'm sorry, Leland.
So 2016, Trump had won. It was the Army-Navy game. And Fox had built a big set up at the Army-Navy game. I was doing my show from up there. It was from like 12 to 3. And your dad showed up at about 1:15. And we started interviewing him. And just then there was this massive gust of wind outside of the Ravens Stadium, sort of a blowy, blustery November day or December day. And the entire lighting grid over us fell down on top of us. So you had me with a light holding a light up, all the lighting guys, and your dad sort of crunched down like this. And he never missed a beat. And for the next 10 minutes while they rebuilt the lighting grid, he just kept talking the whole time. and they covered us with video. And it was the most real, relaxed, humble, and afterwards said thank you. And I got a great picture with him. And it was one of my favorite pictures of him, of just a guy who had absolutely no pretense through it all and could roll with absolutely anything. It was just great.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. He also loved to be interviewed and loved cameras. So he's probably like, I'm not ending this interview, Leland.
Yeah, I know. He was more
Keep rolling.
Keep it rolling. Thank you for sharing that. And I am going to ask one of his old press person about that if she was there. But I love that story. Thank you. And I would love to see that picture.
Yeah, you got to send
sometime.
the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Will do. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Leland. See you soon. Okay, coming up next. I know, it's so my dad, by the way. He loved cameras. When he was, people would always come up to me and be like, is it okay if I take a picture with him? And I was like, he loves it. He's a ham. Everybody in my family, my children are the same. I love a camera.
Oh my gosh, every meeting.
You
know what? Mine are like that too, though. They just
yes. Really quickly, I'm gonna take a drink of water and then we're gonna go to our next guest. Guess who our next? Can you guys guess who it is? Guess. Okay, is he on? Mm-hmm.
Is he here? There he is.
My old friend Clay Aiken. I'm sorry we went a little over.
Look at the face.
Did you just call me old?
I said my old friend.
I've known you a long time. Long time friend.
Clay just turned 25. Happy birthday, Clay. You don't look a day over 16.
That's why these lights are.
Who is this child on our show? Why are you not
out
at
on my
school?
wrinkles?
Yes. Really quick. We have some non-political fun news to get to, but really quick. Okay, we're a little old because your 17-year-old son, Parker, is training to be a pilot. I think we have a picture. He completed his first solo flight. And the second flight, he's going to do is going to involve him flying across the state solo. This would give me a nervous breakdown. Look how old and adult and young man Parker is. How are you doing? How is he doing? I can't believe this. And I would like to say I've known Parker since he was a little boy. He has been obsessed with planes since he was a small child.
Isn't it weird? Because most kids go through different phases, and I actually was worried for a minute. Well, you remember, I was a little worried that he would not get off of. I mean, from 2 and 3, it was trains or planes, one or the other. And as you know, every conversation, it didn't matter what you said, he would somehow figure out. We were sitting at lunch, and you could you could talk about anything, and he would somehow turn it back to planes or trains. And he's stuck with it, and he's very committed to it. I am obviously anxious. I'm not that, I mean, his instructors all say he's better than the adults they teach. And he spends so much of his free time on the simulator or learning or reading the books. I mean, he wants to be like Captain Sully. He wants to be Sully Sullenberger. And if there's somebody who's capable of it, it's probably him, because it's all he's cared about or wanted to do. And so I know he's safe. He's a good driver on, you know, in the car. But it doesn't help when the last time that solo flight, he had to go to a small private airport, and he would land. He had to take off, circle the airport, land, take off, do it 3 times. And so you could see him the entire time. You could see the plane circling. And it's just freaked me out. This next one, we won't even be able to see the plane. You know, he'll take off, and then he flies across the state somewhere and lands there. And that's going to give me, I'll be sedated.
I don't want to know when he does it. I want to know when he's finished it, because it's going to give me anxiety too. No, if you just call me and say he did it, it's amazing.
Yeah,
but
he's good.
Like I said, I love that he is exploring this, and that seems to be his path, because like you said, it's not a joke. He obsessed with planes and trains, like for his whole, like it was something Clay and I were like, I wonder if he'll ever like anything else. And apparently
it's a little disturbing. There were moments where I was like, do I need to have him checked out? Like kids go through different phases, right? He never went through a phase. It's always been this. Yes. He doesn't need to be checked out. I do know that, but he, you know, he loves it. It's what he wants to do. And I have to say, as weird as it is to like not even be exploring other options, it is sort of nice that he knows what he wants to do, because how many kids at 15, 16, 17 knew what they wanted to do with their lives? I mean, some of us are 47 and don't know what we want to do with our lives. And he knows, and it's a career that is unlikely to be taken over by AI.
Yes, of course. It's just so funny, because I remember when he was younger, he would all he would want to watch on his iPad were things about trains and planes. Like it just, even then, like it's all just trains.
Just a little animated video of it. And sometimes he used to do, what is the Roblox, you know, the Roblox game. I'm sure Liberty's into it. If she hadn't already got into it yet, she will be soon. But he would take flights, and he'd be like, well, I've told you this, I can't do such and such because I've got a flight tonight. And I'd go in, and he had an 8 p.m. flight on Roblox scheduled. And it would just be like he would walk his little character onto the plane, and his character would sit down. And that's all it was. And he'd sit there for an hour and a half during this flight. And I would say, and then sometimes he'd spend Robux to buy a first class ticket. And I said, like the chair you're sitting in doesn't change.
But Robux is real money. That's real money.
Committed.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I love it. I'm so happy for him. I just can't believe he's 17. I don't know what's happening to me. I can't believe it. And he's so grown up. He looks just like you, which is hilarious.
Yeah, well, I don't see that. I think he's cuter than me, but he
looks just like you.
He's crazy. I was just thinking the other day, today we drove somewhere, and we were talking about second semester classes this year. And it made me realize, like, he's got 1 year left after this. And that makes me feel extra old. I see my hair falling out in places.
Makes me really sad. Well, one of the topics we really wanted to talk to you about, because I've been obsessed with this and I've been texting everyone on our text chain, is about Broadway. You are a former, maybe possibly future Broadway actor, very prestigious actor, thespian, singer, Clay.
Your standards are very low, and I appreciate it.
No. But this Broadway gossip that's coming out is really interesting. So of the 18 new musicals that opened on Broadway last season, none of them have turned a profit. Since 2020, 46 new musicals have opened on Broadway, costing, this is crazy, $800 million. 43 of the 46 shows lost money, including, and this really surprised me, revivals like Cabaret and Gypsy are closing at losses. The shows cost twice as much as they used to produce, but the ticket prices are only up 3%. There's only 3 new musicals since COVID that have been profitable, but all are the jukebox shows, which means it's like pop music that we all already know. MJ, Six, and Juliet. And original stories are flopping. The only things that are really doing well are Wicked, The Lion King, and Hamilton. Why does no one want to go to Broadway anymore? Why are all these shows failing?
Well, I mean, I don't know if nobody wants to go anymore. I mean, the
new shows,
ticket prices, people are still showing up. It's, you know, Broadway's weird because it's unlike TV or movies where most of the funding is, you know, a lot of it's paid for. Maybe movies aren't the same, but TV, you know, going into it, you've got this ad space that you're selling, and you know that you're making some sort of profit. with Broadway, there's so much money that goes into it before, and it's not uncommon for shows to not make their investment back on Broadway. I mean, it's not uncommon for a show to go up on Broadway, run a year, and still not make the investment back. A lot of times they do that investment hoping that once it's off Broadway, it'll go on to a national tour, or it'll be produced and performed in high schools and community theaters everywhere. So there's lots of places that they can still make some money back. But this is just a really tough year. I mean, it was a very difficult year to be a show on Broadway. I think a lot of that backlog from COVID, where people had to put off and not prepare their shows, started to kind of spill out this year. And, great shows that probably should have been profitable. Boop was one that I loved. That was really great. That should have been profitable, just weren't, because, there's only so many theaters. There's only so many tourists that are coming in to see these shows. And, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I love the original shows, the shows that are MJ or jukebox musicals, they're easier to sell, but sometimes they're not. Like Smash, the NBC show Smash, they put it back on Broadway. They put it on Broadway this year. It was a piece of property, an IP that had a lot of name recognition, still did not recoup its investment and closed really early. So it's just it's a ridiculously competitive market. And, I don't think, like I said, I don't think that people don't want to go. I just think that if you want to be successful on Broadway, you've got to come up with something really interesting and original, like Dear Evan Hansen, like Hamilton, those shows that are incredibly clever, and cheap. Dear Evan Hansen didn't have, you saw it, they didn't have these huge sets, and lots of moving parts, had a small cast, cheaper to produce, and it was really original and great.
I remember when I went to see, this really will date me, Spider-Man on Broadway, and it was horrible. So sorry to everyone involved in that.
You're not insulting me. I didn't write it. But that was, at the time, I think the most expensive show ever to go on Broadway.
Crazy.
Something like $50 million. Yeah.
They had I remember the Spider-Man was coming down. I was like, all this money to have this truly mediocre show. So I don't know. And then sometimes I see new things coming out. No offense if you like this or have any attachment to it, but does anyone really want to see Betty Boop on Broadway? Who is the market for that? Ashley's laughing. I'm serious.
I think sometimes people look at a property and they think, like a jukebox musical. Oh, if I can get Michael Jackson songs. Oh, if I can get Carole King songs. People will know the songs, they want to come. If I can get a property like Betty Boop and a big name like David Foster to write the music for it, et cetera, people might come to it. But it's like lightning. It's kind of like, how on TV, the shows that are very successful, everybody tries to do a copycat of them, right?
Totally.
Idol was successful, and so then you had The Voice, and then you had America's Got Talent. They sort of do that on Broadway too. And Lion King was this huge production with these human puppets, and it became this enormous hit that's run for 20 some years now. And so people tried to think, oh, if Lion King can do it, maybe that's what will get audiences to come. Big production, we'll spend a lot of money. And they spend money on Spider-Man, it doesn't work. And then they'll do a show like Beautiful, which was Carole King's music. Oh, it's jukebox, or Jersey Boys. Oh, Jersey that's the key. Great. We can get people to come if we just use jukebox music from other, artists. And it's, there's no formula. It's just, I don't know that there is a formula at all. You can't just keep plugging it in and say, oh, that show. I'm surprised they haven't done a George Washington musical, or somebody hadn't tried to do a musical about Abe Lincoln since Hamilton was successful, that somebody hadn't tried to do Actually, I think they did. There was a Bloody, Bloody Andrew Jackson.
I was going to say, Bloody, Bloody Andrew Jackson came out. That's another one that, again, sorry to this people that involved, but it was not good. No good, you guys.
But they saw Hamilton, they see history. Let's do that. Everybody just tries to copy somebody else a little bit, and it doesn't necessarily work.
Can I ask you what's the difference between musicals and then something like Oh, Mary, which is obviously a huge success on Broadway, and I believe the lead actor won the Tony for it, and it's obviously not a musical, it's a comedy, but a show like that is a runaway success. Is it really just luck of the draw and talent? Is there any methodology for what works and doesn't?
Well, I think that that's a perfect example of the fact that no, there isn't, because Oh, Mary started as a show that was essentially in Cola Scola's living room. He was, he was doing it for his friends. And then they moved it to a small theater way, way, way downtown. It was just going to run for a little bit. And then Daryl Roth saw it and she brought it into her theater a little bit further uptown. And it just became this word of mouth, huge success. There's something in the New York Times today about Les Mis and how the reviewers hated it, but word of mouth spread it. I think, the reason Oh Mary was successful or is successful is because dude didn't try to copy anything. He really just came up with something completely out of left field, and it attracted people. Now, what's going to happen next? I'm sure we're going to see Lady Bird, the play, coming up next. I don't know, but to copy it probably won't work. It's just, people who it's always the folks who take big risks, like putting Alexander Hamilton, as a Latino who raps. Total risk. Those are the ones that seem to play out to work out.
I mean, Hamilton has a little bit of a backlash among the political elite assholes like me. That's a whole other thing. It's not entirely historically accurate, but that's another conversation for another time. I don't love Hamilton as much as everybody else does.
Well, I will say this. I mean, the historical accuracies or whatnot, I don't know about, but I was, as a musical fan, I had to see it 2 or 3 times before I appreciated it. And I always thought to myself,
Really?
how much of this people who are just like, they're losing their minds over it because everybody else is like, it's like a bandwagon thing. Because
Yeah.
I kind of think I'm smart. I am pretty smart when it comes to following history. I understand who Alexander Hamilton, I mean, I kind of know some of the story, but it's just so dense. There's so much happening in that show. You can't get it all in one sitting. And so these people who show up to it and they're just messing their seats up with excitement.
I know. I will say 2 things.
That's
Number one,
fake.
my mother-in-law cried when she saw it. She loved it so much. And then the second thing, I'm not going to name names. A very well-known, well-respected center political commentator saw Hamilton and then had dinner with my husband and I and was talking about President Hamilton. And I thought Ben's head was going to blow off. Alexander Hamilton was never president, you guys. That's the point of the play. Like, and that's what I mean, where I was like,
Did they
but you
watch
saw
it?
it.
You're
Like,
not but so what is it that you're
a very, very well-known political person, just so we're clear, like this is someone who makes their living talking about politics. And to this day, Ben brings it up. He'll bring it up every 6 months. Like, remember when they said this? And I was like, I'll never forget it. So
the people who are on TV talking about politics most of the time don't need to be the ones who should be.
But thinking that Alexander Hamilton was president is a special, anyway. So
Especially
that's also one of my.
He must have slept through it, because if you watch the show, he specifically talks about that. And
also, he dies. Like, not to give it away, but like,
spoiler alert.
Yeah. But it just goes to show you, there are a lot of people who'll see something and they'll just get excited because everybody else is excited, and they feel like if they don't love it, then they won't look cool. And
they also paid like $5,000 for the tickets. It was like at the height of like,
wow,
when it, like,
what a waste of money.
So I'll tell you guys who it is offline.
Yeah.
It won't say, but then I'll tell you and you'll be like, oh yeah, like that kind of makes sense. Anyway, you brought up Les Miserables. The Kennedy Center hosted Les Mis here in DC. I'm sure you saw that. There's a lot of controversy about performers refusing to perform at the Kennedy Center under Trump. They're having a hard time, from what I understand, getting like some more prestige acts, not that Les Mis isn't, but to come perform at the Kennedy Center. I've seen quite a few things at the Kennedy Center, including Moulin Rouge, which I really enjoyed, by the way. I really liked that. It's just fun and silly. What do you think of artists refusing to come to perform at the Kennedy Center?
Well, you know me, you know the answers to these questions already before you ask them. You know me well enough. I always sort of feel like, I mean, I can understand why people are frustrated. I get that. But, if especially for artists at a place like the Kennedy Center, and you're part of something that is in a place where you're making it accessible to folks who might not normally have the ability to go to New York to see a show, especially because the Kennedy Center does or has done a lot of outreach work to bring in students during the afternoon and whatnot. I wonder who it is you're hurting more. Are you really hurting Donald Trump more? Which, maybe your goal, but are you doing that, or are you hurting local audiences who can't get to New York? And And I don't know that I mean, with this president, I don't know that you're necessarily going to make a difference. You're not going to hurt his feelings if you don't show up. And I feel like, especially some of the shows that pulled out, that had a message behind them, if they were a gay oriented show or talked about LGBT themes, and they canceled before they were canceled upon. Obviously there were some things that were canceled that I wish had not been canceled, and I'm critical of the administration for doing that. But for those shows that pulled out as a protest, I do wonder, are you silencing yourself before you were asked to be? I don't know that you're necessarily always getting the impact that you want to have when you boycott like that. And people make decisions out of emotion too much, and they're angry and they want to pull their support. And I think if you slow down and think about it, sometimes those things don't necessarily have the end result that you want them to, or maybe you would have a bigger impact, or could have a bigger impact. What's that? I'd rather be inside the tent pissing out than outside pissing in, right? And nobody's asking, you don't have to join the Trump administration to perform in a show at the Kennedy Center, but you might reach some people who wouldn't have had the chance to if you show up anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also think that it is much cheaper to go see there. You can do season passes at the Kennedy Center. And, if you want to bring your art, there are just people that are not going to be able to afford to go to New York City and spend a few $100s on a Broadway ticket, and they can probably make it happen at the Kennedy Center. And I think they do a lot of like charity events too for people that can't afford it. So I agree with you. I think it's just hurting normal people who want to experience art in the way that wealthier people can. Two more really quick questions. The Kennedy Center Awards are coming up in December, where they're honoring a whole host of different people, including Rocky Balboa, Sylvester Stallone, which I am happy
tell me the
about
whole list, because I read it and I thought
it's like Donna Summer, Sylvester Stallone. Oh my gosh, I can't remember now. There's a country singer.
Okay, here we go. Because I found it. I was a little worried when I realized, because in his first administration, there were people who would not accept it during his term.
Okay, so it's George Strait, Sylvester Stallone, Kiss, Michael Crawford, and Gloria Gaynor.
Gloria Gaynor.
I Will Survive, yes.
So
the question I was going to ask you,
I would argue that most of them, with the possible exception of Gloria Gaynor, who I love. I mean, I'm not
clean,
Gloria Gaynor by any stretch whatsoever. I would kill to have her career. But George Strait is a legend. I mean, he is a full-on legend in the country world. Kiss, legends also. Sylvester Stallone, I would argue, I think they all probably qualify for it, except for the Michael Crawford one kind of threw me for a loop. I think that's because Trump loves Phantom of the Opera. And but the Michael Crawford one, I think if you're looking at the pantheon of people who have been honored at the Kennedy Center over the decades, that one, because I don't know if I could think of anything he's done besides Phantom of the Opera.
Do you think any artists showing up to, because people that haven't seen it, artists show up to pay homage to the people that are honored? So like someone is going to probably perform a Kiss song. Do you think the people that are going to come and help honor the people receiving it, do you think they're going to get any backlash?
Oh, I'm sure they'll get backlash. Listen, if you were to be honored at the Kennedy Center this year, maybe next year, that's maybe your next year.
That's definitely
when you get
next.
honored next year, I'll show up for you. That's not me necessarily. That's not me supporting this administration. I mean, the folks who show up for these things, when George Strait gets his honor, right? You show up for George Strait. And I hope that people show up for their friends. David Foster, I think, is probably somebody who deserves a Kennedy Center honor, has for a long time. If he were to get one, I would, I'd be present to support him. But I don't think that it's listen, people make out of things, make what they want to out of things. There are going to be plenty of people who see Reba McEntire showing up to support George Strait and assume Reba McEntire is supporting Donald Trump. I don't know her politics. I don't need to. I know she's there to support her friend George Strait or whoever, right? So hopefully they won't, but this is America 2025. Of course they're going to get shit from somebody.
I am just begging. I really hope to God, because I love the Kennedy Center Awards. I think it's such a cool event, that it's not just like Kid Rock and Carrie Underwood. I hope it's not like the same rotation of MAGA people that have performed for the president already. I think that would be very, I don't know,
I think you
reductive.
could probably
So
expect that it will be based largely off of who's being honored. But it'd be very interesting to see who is in the Gloria Gaynor section of the show, right? Because, you know, the disco world, will they show up for her? Will the folks who she's worked with over the years show up for her and not make it political? I mean, I can think right now, I did Celebrity Apprentice with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister.
I love him.
He'll be there for Kiss, right? Because he's a big Trump supporter. The country, Nashville's got plenty of folks who I'm sure big and what's his name? John Rich will be there for George Strait. It'll be a lot of Trump people, but hopefully for some folks like Sylvester Stallone, there'll be folks in Hollywood who rise above it.
My last question for you is, I don't know if you've seen this TikTok video that's gone around of Joe Jonas singing with Les Miserables at there's some event, some performance, like some award show.
Or is it Joe or
Nick?
is it,
I'm sorry, Nick Jonas. Yes. And he's singing, I would just like to say I know nothing about music, except I know that he wasn't great. He was singing this song, this Les Miserables song, and he starts singing it. And then the man who is famous for singing Phantom of the Opera sings after, and people, like, it's become a parody
Michael
of, like,
Crawford?
Yes, I think it's Michael Crawford. I don't know. But it's become a parody online of people sort of making fun of stunt casting in shows and just using like celebrities who maybe vocally can't rise to the level of Broadway. Jennifer Lopez recently said we're misunderstanding her voice and that she's really meant for Broadway and musicals. I would love for you to comment on any of that, and then I'll let you go.
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna skip the last one.
Okay.
but Nick Jonas was in Les Mis on Broadway before he was famous. So I got to see. You're gonna have to send me the TikTok later because I'm surprised you haven't
He's
yet.
getting dragged all over
Jonas
social media, but...
Nick Jonas actually, as a child, had a very good voice. He played Gavroche, I think, on Broadway in Les Mis. But so maybe people caught him in a bad moment when he wasn't really trying, or people are being too critical. I was a stunt cast on Broadway myself, so I really can't talk too much shit about
except you have the voice of an angel, so let's
ironically, I did a show where I didn't sing. So, we were just talking about Broadway not being able to fill meet their nut for making money. Arguably, some of those shows that need to stay open a little bit longer have to stunt cast in order to get the people in. I don't know that I think there's some shows like Chicago that stunt cast too much. They've been running for 20 years.
I feel like Miranda and I will be on Chicago at some point. Everyone does that.
I expect Chicago to stunt cast, though. You kind of expect
that's what they're good at.
Yeah.
And Rent did it when it was open, and there's some shows that do it and do it well. But I think that most Broadway producers respect their shows enough, because if they're involved most of them have been involved in the show since it was in its infancy, before it made it to a stage. So they've got investment in it being good. I think the stunt cast that you might be talking about are the ones when they put a show up just to be a celebrity vehicle, like they did for Gypsy with Audra McDonald. And there were a lot of people who didn't necessarily think that her voice was going to be a match for that particular show. As an actress, she's great. I didn't see it, so I can't speak to how good it was. But I think there's some shows they mount Evita because Ricky Martin wanted to do it, and that would be maybe a stunt cast.
Or like Bertie Fieldstein.
I would not see Nick Jonas as
for
a
Hello
stunt
Dolly
cast because
he's
good.
Yeah, or Funny Lady. For Funny Lady,
Funny
when
Girl.
she was on, Funny Girl. Yeah, and that was very dramatic because you don't have to say it, I'll say it, she vocally could not compare in any way to Barbara Streisand or Lea Michele. And I actually ended up seeing Lea Michele, and it was amazing.
Lea Michele in it,
she had to take over.
That would have also been a stunt cast. It would have pulled people in, and it would have been, I don't know what the decision, listen, when I did Spamalot back in 2008, the producer came to me, early on in the run and said, listen, you tell me what show you want to do and I'll put it up. I had been good enough for ticket sales at the beginning of my run that they said he was like, I'll put a show up if you want to do it. fortunately for maybe him, who knows, show that I picked, he actually flew across the country to see some production of it. And he came back to me, he was like, "Oh my God, you're way too old to play that part." So he never put it up. So it never happened. But there are times that people, see an opportunity to throw a show on Broadway because they have a name that'll do it. Listen, I think there's some Kelly Clarkson, I can't believe, has not done a show on Broadway yet. The minute she has a show that she wants to do and she tells it to a producer, they'll mount it for her, right? Because it's going to sell. And I happen to think she's very talented, so she'll probably do very well in it. But sometimes those folks who choose shows don't necessarily choose the right one for them, right? They choose a show that they love, but it's not good for them. If Kelly said that she wanted to do Wicked, it might not be right for her. That's not her voice. I'm picking something randomly, but if the person like Nicole Scherzinger picks the right show for them, then it can be incredible, as Sons of Boulevard was this year. I don't even think I don't think most people didn't consider that a stunt cast by the time it got to Broadway.
She's incredible.
Because she was so good in it that you forgot that she was Nicole Scherzinger. I think that's the key. When you go see this show, are they so good that you can forget you're seeing Nicole Scherzinger? Or do you show up to the show and you're trying to watch Evita and all you see is, oh, that's Ricky Martin up there? I think that's the difference between a stunt cast and a really well cast show.
Well, thank you so much, Clay, for all your insights on Broadway. I just really wanted to talk about Broadway with you. We can't always just talk about the government shutdown. So thank you.
Oh my God, let me tell you, this full well. I have taken a complete diet off of the news. If it happens,
Clay doesn't want to talk about politics anymore, so we're respecting your wishes.
I did not even realize that you're going to call me a liar. I did not realize that there was a shutdown going on till yesterday.
I love that
don't think you're a liar, but we text about politics every day, so I'm not entirely
We text about it a little bit, but I didn't, I shouldn't say I didn't realize. I had heard that it was happening, but it's so not a part of my life that yesterday when I was walking through the living room and somebody had the TV on, it was on the news, it was like a shutdown. Oh, that's right. I totally had forgotten. I watch the UK news now instead of the US news because I just feel like I get enough.
I hope you come back to it. I love talking to you about politics. I don't know what this is.
We can talk about it anytime.
I don't.
I just think it's so. It's my life is so much. My hair's growing back, and it's not just the Rogaine.
I'm just saying. I
secret? Okay, good.
You shouldn't run away from it. Whatever. I like everybody when they're talking about politics. It's fine. Clay, do you want to plug anything before we say goodbye?
Yes. Citizen McCain with my good friend Megan McCain. You guys should definitely watch that every Wednesday. Right.
You can find Clay on all forms of social media, but he's bad at it and you don't post enough. But that's it. He doesn't. He's very private. What the hell, Clay? You have privacy. What's that?
I'm working on it.
Clay, thank you so much. I love you. Come back anytime if you ever want to talk about politics. The door's open, but I understand.
If I ever have the itch to scratch, this is where I'll be.
Somebody's taking a beat from talking about politics. It's dumb, Clay. I love you, but come on. All right. See you soon. Bye.
Bye, Clay.
Thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back. We went over today. I'm sorry. Same time, same place next week on Monday. And then Wednesday, we have our special interview with the lovely and talented Cheryl Hines. We'll see you there. Bye.